making up any big deal.
1963. I stayed up all night, just talking to myself, trying to put up all the pieces together, but nothing was sticking. I was really worried about my neighbor, so I decided to do a little investigation. I wonder, what did the police see at my neighbor's house that it made them search the woods? I grabbed my backpack and a flashlight, then quietly tiptoed downstairs, trying to not wake my sister or my parents. As I got out, it was pitch black. I walked towards her house, and I stood there for a whole minute, wondering if I should enter or no. Am I committing a crime? But I just couldn't resist and tried to open the door. It was unlocked to my surprise. I walked in with fear in my eyes. I didn't dare to turn on the light, just in case someone might see me breaking in and calls the police. I walked towards the nicely built kitchen. I flashed around till I saw a note stuck on the fridge. It said, "I have to finish my task. Don't look for me." That's insanely weird. What task? What could she possibly had to do in the woods? Did she kidnap the little boy? At that moment, I was getting really scared, and a couple of seconds later, I heard footsteps. My hand started shaking, and I hid behind the counter with tears in my eyes. Then suddenly, I heard a little girl's voice say, I instantly recognized that voice. It was my little sister, Ali. I quickly rushed to her, grabbed her hand, and ran back home. That night was unforgettable. I had to explain to my sister what I was doing there, this late, but of course to not scare her. I just said I was worried, so I checked on our neighbor, that's all. She had promised me to not tell our parents, so I got her in bed and sat at the desk just talking with my thoughts once again. "1963. After the long night, the sun had finally raised from its sheets. I stretched and walked downstairs. As I stepped down, my eyes widened, and I gasped. My neighbor was sitting in the living room drinking tea with my mother. But how is this possible? Didn't she go missing? I glared at her weirdly, and she caught my looks and said,
"Oh, hello, little one."
As I was still in shock, I said in my stuttering voice, "Hello, Mrs."
"Call me Mary, sweetheart."
And she gave me a smile, then continued talking to my mom. I couldn't hold myself and said, "May I ask you a question?" "Mary?" She looked at me and said,
"Of course, dear. Anything."
I stood there and just went for it. "Where have you been for the past few days?" I stood there as I waited for an answer awkwardly. She had responded,
"Oh, dear. I was visiting my family and, of course, my grandchildren. They're going through a quite rough time."
I was just full of questions. So I just went on and asked her another question. I said, "I'm sorry if this sounds weird, but what are you doing at the woods each night?" She had said once again.
"Oh, no worries, dear. Well, I got insomnia, which causes me troubles to sleep. So we could say. I'm full of energy like a young child. I walk to the woods to cut up some fresh wood. Since my family lives in the city, it's kind of difficult for them to get wood, so I chop it up for them."
I stood there and listened to her. I thanked her for answering my questions, then made my way back to my room. As the night time set it once again, I noticed Mary going off to the woods again. I just was so curious, and I followed her. At one moment as we walked in the woods, I lost sight of her, and I kind of got scared. so I yelled out, "Mary." I walked for a bit and heard screams. I quickly ran over to the sound, and I saw Felix, with Mary's axe in his hands, covered in blood. I was shaking in fear. As I tried backing away from the scene, I stepped on a branch. Felix turned back and he saw me, his face covered in blood. He started chasing me.